Hello and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. I am your host, the whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and this is Black Minds News. Black Minds News is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, insinuate, develop, investigate, unveil, decode, spread the news, whether it's by news, video, website, or quotes from publications. As I articulate these information, I accept the creator of the universe be here, heart, soul, mind, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created this place that we call the United States, we, the foundational black Americans, the bloodline, the historical lineage, the historical people known as slaves, who we call ourselves BADOS, Black American Descendant of Slaves. Some say Black African Descendant of Slaves. Others say ADOS, American Descendant of Slaves. We, today, the children, offspring, and present generation, we give honor to our ancestors. And you know what my motto is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. And today's date is August 15, 2019. Well, came out with the statistics on a news article that I seen. Came out a few days ago, maybe a week ago. And it's talking about the statistics between black men and dealing with policing powers, the policing authorities, the municipal servants, right? And a lot of people like to say that these are hogwash. You are inflating the situation. If people would just comply, these things wouldn't take place. You know how some people can only window shop, right? Window shopping is you on the outside looking at the mannequin and thinking that how good it would look on you. Unless you're the mannequin speaking, you can tell it ain't just the clothes, my homie. You get what I'm saying? And so, Black Minds News, I'm going to look at this article, disseminate this information to you, give you my opinion on it. I might have a video for it as well. So what? Stay tuned for this broadcast. Hey, how's y'all doing? This is your host, the whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Minds, coming with another Black Minds News Report. First and foremost, I want to say what's good to my family, subscribers, old and new. What's good, fam? Glad to see that you took some time out to come over here and was talking about on Black Minds News, trying to give it to you on the daily as I tried to promise. So here it is once again. Thank you for your participation. Hats off and a kneeling prostration to you. Passerbys, if your GPS on your search engine somehow allowed you to come by and you seen the thumbnail or happened to see the title that enticed you to click on, welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Now you might say, what do you mean by you saying the most hated show in the black corner of the internet? Well, we've been around for 7 years. We used to get 275,000, which is 250,000 views, 50,000, 30,000, and so forth. As of 2019, we can't get nothing but 100 views. Yet we got 2,900. Every time we get close to that 50, they come back and take it, and I can prove it. You listening to me, YouTube? Because I'm going to get that check. But anyway, welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Now, let's get into today's topic. they say that there is some disparaging statistics that the encounters between people of BADOS, ADOS, and could be black others, but primarily I believe it's more BADOS and ADOS. That the encounter between black men and policing officials and powers seems to be higher rates of mortality and death in our encounters, right? So a lot of us, we kind of know, we see a lot. Now again, I will always say that black folks don't go out here protesting against what we have discerned is wrong. You never see that with black folks. Black folks know the difference between, even though a lot of people don't want to give us the kind of credit that black folks actually are the ones that you can guide on whether something right or wrong. Black people don't lie about things unnecessarily, right? Especially when you have been in the historical positions we have been in. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have people in our group that may, fabricate and lie and steal, cheat, and do everything else as if other groups do the same thing. But how is it if it's good for the goose is good for the gander? Is it because other people are more compliant when they're encountered with police? Or are there a lot of variables inside the dynamic between the accostation, if that's a word, I made it up, but I just made one. Accostation between a cop and a black person. Are there variables within the cop that is equated in part of the encounter that maybe is not statistically to be seen, but somehow statistically now they're trying to come up with data and say there's something to this. Well, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead first. Let me give you this article first on it, and then we should be right back after that. Matter of fact, I think after I do that, I'm going to go ahead and give you something else. I'm going to go ahead. Hold on. Homie, where you going? That ain't what we doing. I mean, boy, that's very sensitive. You jumping up the bag before I can even get it going. What's wrong with you? Slow up, homie. All right, hold on. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read this article, and then we'll come back after that. So let me go ahead and do this. And let's go ahead and, matter of fact, let me give you the visual for that because I didn't even give you that, right? So I got to let you see what I'm reading, and then we'll go from there. First thing in the morning, y'all. Be a little patient with me. Go ahead and put it up on your screen now. Let me go ahead and read this for you, so check this out. Black men are 2 times more likely to be killed by police over their lifetime than white men. You know I'm going to say that again. Black men are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police over their lifetime than white men. Story was done August the 5th, 2019, coming out of Newsweek, and this is how it reads. Police force is the 6th leading cause of death among young men, according to researchers who found black men are 2.5 times more likely than white men to be victims of this form of violence. American Indians and Alaskan Native women are 1.5 times more likely to be killed than white women, according to a study published in the Journal of PNAS. And black women, American Indian and Alaskan Native men, and Latino men are at 1.4 times greater risk of being killed by police force than their white peers. However, Latino women and Asian Pacific Islanders are less likely to be killed than their white counterparts. Between 2013 and 2017, 11,456 fatal encounters with police and members of the public were reported. That includes the death of Michael Brown and Eric Gardner and boys like Tamir Rice, which were protested against by members of the Black Lives Matter movement. Death links to police violence were the 6 biggest killers in the United States for men aged between 25 and 29, after accidents including overdoses, traffic fatalities, suicide, homicide, heart disease, and cancer. Over the course of their lives, men were found to have a 1 in 2,000 chance of being killed by a police officer in the United States, falling to 1 in 33,000 for women. The researchers looked at the data from the National Vital Statistics System mortality files and fatal encounters, which is FE, database managed by journalists, which cites public records and news coverage. The figures include shootings as well as deaths involving tasers and the use of force such as restraint. It is already known that police officers in the United States kill more people than other advanced industrial democracies, the author said, citing past research. Study co-author Frank Edwards, assistant professor at the School of Criminal Justice, Rutgers University, told Newsweek, police violence should be taken seriously as a public health issue. Policing is contributing to early death both through the use of fatal force and through aggressive tactics that have been found to have severe negative effects on the physical and mental health of people of color who live in over-policed communities. He argued, if we recognize that using the police to respond to a problem comes with a significant risk of death, it encourages us to think about solutions to problems like mental health, substance abuse that do not rely on police. Adequately funding community-based services outside the criminal justice system would be a strong start and is firmly in the line with treating the underlying problem police respond to as public health and social issues rather than criminal issues. Rory Kramer, associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Criminology at Villanova University, who did not work on the research, told Newsweek, this paper is very clear, demonstrating that via our police, the United States is killing people of color, especially young black men, at disturbingly high rates. The United States doesn't collect data on police death or adequate data on police violence more generally, Kramer said. Instead, scholars and policymakers have to try to fill in the gaps via great journalistic efforts like Fatal Encounters or surveys that were not designed to focus on this specific issue. Thus, these are only estimates, but reliable ones. We also lack the data to look in depth at the causes of the racial disparities, the author estimates, though research on police violence like MINDZ provides statistical evidence that discrimination is a real part of the problem and that it is only complemented by historical and quantitative research as well. Kramer agreed with Edwards that police violence should be treated as public health issues, but also a political decision we have made as a society, a historical fact in the United States for generation, a sociological structure of society, and an economic inefficiency amongst others. There's no need to frame it as only one or another thing, he said. It is also a public safety problem, political issue, racial inequalities, a gender inequality, an economic inequality, and a moral crisis. Such encounters can cause a ripple effect in communities, continued Kramer. Research shows a vicious feedback loop through which police brutality lowers community trust in police, especially amongst people of color. Police who believe people view them as illegitimate are more likely to advocate for and use excessive force. Police who use excessive force influence the behavior of other police with whom they work. This leads to further police violence and further lower communities' trust in police and problem zones. Professor Lawrence Sherman of the Institute of Criminology at the University of Cambridge, who did not work on the research, told Newsweek, we have never before had such a large data of set of death related to a systematic count of people at risk in each category of race and gender. This study should remind all Americans of the continual inequalities of life chances for various groups in our society and the need to combat the social consequences of such disparities.
ProPublica study pointed out that it found that among young black men aged ages 15 to 19, they were shot by police at a rate 21 times higher than whites the same age. You can see the numbers up there on the screen. 1.47 per million among whites, 31.17 per million among blacks. That's a problem, right?
It is. Well, and if you look at it, what ProPublica means, that is per capita or by percentage. So if you look at the percentage of blacks and look at the percentage of whites, then you get that. It's not done by population. And so, yeah, it is a problem. And you look at one is 1.47 per million, and the other one is 31.17 per million. And again, you have to remember, African Americans only make up 12% of the population. Some of that, quite honestly, is probably attributed to the fact that maybe there is more interaction with law enforcement. But still, those numbers are jarring when you look at it. 31 times or 21 times more or 24 times more. That's a huge number.
Last night, Don, Bill O'Reilly, he had some other statistics suggesting police shootings aren't necessarily unreasonably high in the black community. He said when you include all age groups, more than twice as many whites were killed by police in 2012 by blacks. He said 123 blacks were killed in 2012 by police. 326 whites were killed. You see the numbers right there. Is that a fair statistic?
Well, he's right and he's wrong. So here's the thing. The reason I'm looking now, because I think this is very important. I want to get the numbers correct. The first one that we looked at, this were 15 to 19-year-olds, and that was over a 2-year period from 2010 to 2012. So 21 times greater than whites. And then the stat that you just showed from Bill O'Reilly, this is in 2012. 123 blacks in 2012, and 326 were killed by cops, I should say. And then 123 whites were killed by cops.
No, 123 blacks,
123 blacks and 326 whites were killed by cops. But he's not doing it percentage-wise. If you look at it again, 12% of the population, he's not doing it by percentages, he's doing it by total population. Even yet with those numbers, when you think it's only 12% of the population, that's still a large number. That's still a bigger percentage.
Yes, Sonny, go ahead.
And can I weigh in? I mean, I think when you really look at the statistics are really faulty, because when you talk about officer-involved shootings, Wolf, there isn't a mandatory reporting, right? It's a self-reporting. It's almost on the honor system. And so although the FBI does have some statistics, most people know that those statistics can't even be counted upon because they are self-reported. And so my suggestion has been all along that we need mandatory reporting from our law enforcement agencies around the country. And I think that the number of officer shootings involving young black males is actually much higher than is even self-reported. And so that's something that really needs to be part of the conversation.
All right. So there was Sonny there, right? Sonny was going ahead and let it all out, right? All right. So now that video that you've seen there was actually done back in 2014. Right, there's nothing been updated. So that was a conversation that CNN had going back to 2014. Here we are now, 5 years later, and a new study has been brought out that is talking about black men and their encounter with police is actually considered a health crisis, right? Well, they won't say crisis, they're going to say an issue, right? And so think about that. When you have encounters with police as to be a part of, when they say heart disease, right, drug overdose, suicides, encountering with police is 6 with death with black folks. Now, again, we are already statistically higher in a lot of other categories as number 1, right? But then you got 6, and I'm pretty sure 5 of those are going to be like heart disease, you know, all the things that have contributed that black people die, most of and number 1 in, but you're going to have police in there too, as in the 6th part of that. So it's just basically we dying more with number 1 than that as well, right? So you see how the article talked about the difference when it was talking about other people. When they talk about, well, you know, Alaskans and Asians, they say peers. They call white people peers, right? Did you notice that? And then the other part was when they talked about Latinos, they said it's their counterparts. But when it was strictly with the black, it was black man, white man. He ain't no part, no relation. This is the dynamic here. This is the structure that has been built from the inception, right? This is the dynamic, you and us, your team, my team, right? So it talked about how globally, when you talk about democracy, now, again, as the United States go everywhere selling democracies to those who are willing to buy it and say this is how you want to run your country to be just like us. So all of them that have been established as democracies globally, the United States is number one when it comes to statistically incarcerating, right? When we're talking about incarcerating their society. And again, the United States is only like, I think, 5 to 6% of the world's population, but it has the biggest incarceration amongst its society. And when you look at the statistics of that, black people are the bigger proportion of that number, right? And so this alarm is ringing because somebody may look at it and say, man, it's only 2.5. I mean, you're acting as if like we're talking about, double digit 10%. But again, you got to remember, 2.5% of a people, again, 12 to 13 is the number they always play with as we're supposed to be percentage wise. But when you break it down to numbers of between 40 and 50 million people, that's a lot of people. But when you look at what they tried to use the stat back in 2014 to try to take away the fact that it's disparagingly, right? As the report that wrote today in 2019 said that this is disturbingly high rates. Disturbingly. So in 2014, they came up to try to make the comparison that, well, white people are getting killed way more than black people. Look, the data says 326 white people were killed by cops to just 123 blacks, right? Now, on face value, if you saw that, you would be like, yeah, you're right, man. 326 to 123, that's almost 3 times more, man. White people get killed. But again, as Don Lemon tried to show you and say, hey, wait a minute. If you are 60, 70% of the population, and we're talking about hundreds million, right? 200 something million people out of 340 million, 350 million people. You got over 200 million supposedly according to your statistical and census count. How do you compare 326 to a smaller group of 123? And how do you try to say, well, see, it's even? Oh, no, there's no way that could be statistically if you broke that down. There'll be no way you can make 123 and 326. That 123 going to be way more than that because, again, you have way more people. So that number gets smaller as to a smaller group. That number is bigger. And so, they always want to contribute that the fact that, they want to use drugs and mentals, and you shouldn't be using police for that anyway. They said there should be way more funding in some of these community-based organizations. Funding. But again, when situations arises and somebody either having a bad trip or, smoke some of that damn, whatever the hell that shit is, that loud, well, I ain't gonna say loud, but I'm gonna say, what's that shit they be buying, that synthetic ass weed, and you start tripping out and do all this shit. And so K2 and all K2 and all that kind of shit. Then what happens is who's going to be the first responders when people pick up the phone? They only know 911, right? And most people only know if you know your local police phone number direct without calling 911. So 911 going to be the first responder. Then it depends on who the operator is. They're going to dispatch police. So police are going to be your first responders. And again, they're not there as professions are dealing with health and mental or drug related. They only know how to deal with situations and criminality. That's what they do. Now, again, according to the psychosis of the individual who's there, he might, again, got his own personal shit. And so now he's bringing that to the work. And the next thing what happened is you end up being killed over something that was simplistic because you had a trip on some drugs, or you got too damn drunk, or you got into, situations like that. And primarily a lot of the county lockups, a lot of people in there are people, again, that do crime, and I'm not going to say that they don't do crime, but what I'm going to say is that they are also becoming health mental facilities where a lot of people who are not being treated of the diagnosis are trying to self-medicate. That's what really, when you talk about black folks, a lot of people are using drugs to self-medicate themselves due to the simple fact they don't have the economics or the health insurance and so forth. So it's kind of like the story I did the other day when that brother that went to the Chicago VA and shot at the, let's say, the building, right? They ain't said no more about it. But then let's ask yourself this question. They never want to acknowledge the fact that he might have been a veteran. When I seen the picture of the brother and kind of on the top of his head had kind of like some overgrowth in it, right? Like, hair didn't grow, but he had an overgrowth. So again, he might have been a veteran, had something that happened to him while he had been serving, and somehow he can't get seen, not qualified. Something, it could have been, who knows, a lot of things. All they tried to contribute is that he was a felon and he couldn't have a gun. But they didn't want to get into the depths of who he might have been and why he was doing what he's doing. Because why would you come to a place like that to do a shoot up when most everybody in there is ex-war, people, military people. They're in there trying to get themselves, some kind of medical help. So maybe I'm assuming, again, analytically looking at it, trying to, assess the situation. I said, well, maybe he was trying to get the attention because you weren't going to do it. So he know if he get the 3 hots in the cot, he most likely now can go ahead and get some medical because now he in the system. You get what I'm saying? He couldn't get no help through the way he should have got serving the country and so forth, that somehow now he had to go this way, kind of Rambo-ish, but he ain't shooting nobody, just shooting at the building, right? And he had to go in there. So again, what ended up happening, he's going to be now ushered into this secondary mental facility, which is these counties, these lockups, right? And so what happens is in that situation, it's seen that they didn't come there because they're trying to be a little apprehensive about killing. But a lot of times you done seen situations where people come and somebody might have ADH and stuff like that or some kind of disorder. And police somehow, maybe they got a rake in their hand or something like that. They're just straight out killing them. Yet the parent who called is trying to tell the police, oh, yes, they got mental issues and stuff. But their whole remedy ain't, I'm not going to deal with you. I'm just going to put you in the box. Right? And so what you heard Sonny said a lot of the data, there is no real statistics that police have a category for this. And primarily it needs to be mandatory reporting because again, the way they got it, it is self-reported, meaning it's up to the officer. It's the discretion of the officer whether he wants to report about the shooting. So that means that the numbers and the statistics that you're talking about can never be in its entirety accurate. You understand? Because you're leaving it to, again, the person who's out there, self, judge, jury, and then now you're going to leave it up to him. And again, he might know why, the real reason why he did what he did. So he's going to cover all this trash. You're giving them they're getting too much to cover too much. And so, when it talks about policing in communities, and saying based on what people are seeing, and again with social media and the inundation and the abundance that we see on the daily, and knowing that the communities that we live in are over policed, right? We all know that we're over policed because again, we understand again, as you've been here, you've seen the show that I did when I gave you the history of police, where it started off as a patty role and evolved into, right, slave patrol, and then it ended up becoming what it became. So the whole inception of this organization is built on, again, if we as BADOS and ADOS are the descendants of that which we talk about as the historical people and lineage, then that organization and us have a history. Who else are you going to have them next to all the damn time? And a lot of the people that work in them really don't have no real encounter with black people, and a lot of it is bias, just racial in its all applications of it. And so when they come to the job, they looking at this like this is different between being where they live as they would consider heaven and coming down to the damn jungle. And that's why you see a lot when they was, the police review boards, not the review board, or what was it? That was the name of it. I can't remember the name of the the organization that did that came up with Philadelphia and found out all these police officers on social media saying all kinds of things, and yet you're supposed to be going out to the public, but you already have a preconceived notion about how you're dealing with them and how you're looking at them. So how can there not be this biased aspect? And then when you encounter them, you ain't sympathetic. You really able to hide behind it and get something off and hide behind the fact that it was just my job. So the data is showing that this encounter between police and black men is deadly. So we have to say, you know what? You better think deeply about when it's time for you to call the police, and whether it be somebody in your family situation. Now, somebody trying to break in your crib and all that stuff, you don't get no 2-cent shit for that shit. Come get this motherfucker. How you got to get them up out of here, right? That's okay. But we're talking about when it becomes, domestic, internal family situations and disputes. Police got to be the last resort of resort, because that call that I have seen, and I've done many stories where family members have called because the situation got out of hand and maybe it became a little physical, and due to the difference between age and the individual, that they couldn't deal with it. So they figured if they called the police, at least they'd be able to apprehend you and calm you down, and end up, whatever happened is they end up being killed. So just imagine you make that call, police come, all you trying to do is trying to resolve the situation the best way, because you can't, it's out of hand for you. They come in, and then now the person is now dead. So you're living with that. Think about it. You have to live with the fact, even though you didn't do it, but because you felt that was the way to go. So what ended up happening is the community is not trusting. So when you say snitches get stitches, it's not so much about telling. It's about trusting in somebody who can't say, because you all wearing the same uniform and badge on. How can you tell who's good and who's not? So when you encounter people, people got all kind of methods of how, when they dealing with police, they try to be very, non-threatening, compliance. But then you may also have somebody who is got an itch and looking for a scratch. And no matter how you do what you do, they're going to put you in a situation, in a scenario, because that's what they was looking for. And so they say that 2.5 times black man encounter with police is becoming deadly. I don't know if that's any new stats to us, but again, it is news. And this is Black Minds News, and I just want to thank you for those who came over here and heard this. So, before we get up out of here, let me go ahead and give you this. Then we'll come back, and we're going to end this show here, right? So, hold on, check this out. I'll be right back. So, all right, let me go ahead and do this so we can get up out of here. And once again, I want to thank everybody for your participation, coming over and listening to the Black Minds News. And got to remember that, they tell this stuff for a purpose, right? It says such encounters can cause a ripple effect in our communities. Research shows a vicious feedback loop through which police brutality lowers community trust in police, especially amongst people of color. Police who believe that they are viewed illegitimately, they say they are more likely to advocate for the use of excessive force. So because you feel a certain way towards them, they feel a certain way towards you. Now, I don't understand how that's the way that the job works, but that's what they said in that study, right? And they say police who use excessive force influence the behavior of other police. Well, again, if I'm a badass cop and you my partner, how I'm gonna be a badass cop and you work with me every day unless you asking to be transferred to go somewhere with somebody else? As long as you work with me, what they say, fruit don't fall far from the tree, right? And so this leads to further police violence. They say it lowers the community trust in police. And what happens? The problem continues to grow. So we got to remember this, right? We got to remember that when we greet one another, what's good, brother? What's good, sister? Give that universal nod. Take all that goddamn hate, jealousy, and envy and spite out your ass. Understand, we is all in this. We only ones we got. Understand those within the uniform of the team that you're on. Yes, you can have allies. They are important. But you gotta ask them, are they willing to be in the frying pan when the shit gets hot and when it starts? Ask them if they ever heard of John Brown. Is that story real to them? Or is it some fictitious story that had once upon a time somebody wrote? See, we have to stay vigilant, mindful, cautious, and high spirit. Because there's some people out here who seek our demise. So until the next show, y'all, Black Minds News, want to say peace, love, until the next show.
You